Assalamu alaikum, good evening, and welcome to tonight's episode of Talking Points. I'm your host, Syed Niaz Ahmed. In our studios today, we have a young writer, illustrator, and content creator, and whatnot. Inshra Sakhabat Russell. She has been on the show before, but that was years ago. So probably she has forgotten what she told us, and I have forgotten what she told us, and probably some of the viewers have forgotten who she is. So let's go and refresh our memories. Inshra, tell us something about yourself, what you do.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. My name is Inshra Sakhabat Russell, and I would describe myself as a designer and maker and director of visual stories.
Right.
And in the last 20 years, and from the time that we did Talking Point last time, it has taken on many forms, being from photography to photography, namely fashion photography and portraits, to films, namely music videos and fashion films and short films, to children's books, which I've written and illustrated.
Over the years, media has also developed and changed. And
it has.
New things have come in.
Yes, that's correct. And in my own life journey, a lot of things have happened since the last time, which was I think about 6 years ago. Yeah. I've had 2 children, and they have both grown up outside of Bangladesh. So teaching them, teaching them Bengali and having bilingual stories was very important for me. So therefore the co-founding of a children's publishing company with my friend. And it has also, my entrepreneurial spirit has led me to have a production company through which I provide these creative services, most of which I do myself, again in the form of photography, film, illustrations and graphic design.
That is what, in short, that's what you do.
Correct.
Well, you mentioned your children, Sissy, and then they're growing up in kind of a multicultural society, and probably the pressures of the language spoken at home and the language spoken outside and all that. So yes. Did you see that your work was getting results? Because your books, some of the names are like Chonchol, Sissy. So that depicts a Bengali name or a Bengali family, or probably it means somebody who is fidgety or naughty or something. So would your children understand?
Right. So when you want to teach your children a different language other than English, in our case Bengali, they always say that you have to, one parent or both parents have to speak 100% in that language. Right. But because I spoke with my parents in English and Bengali, it was never really the case, and no matter how much I tried, I couldn't do that. And so that's why we decided to make these bilingual books. And depending on the age range of the books that we've made, we've done some board books for children where it's just simple words, opposites, colors in English and Bangla. And it gives an opportunity to speak to your child in both languages. And then to the older books, like Where Are the Chonchols, which is my latest book, where you really give them, or at least the attempt is to give them a sense of how it feels in Bangladesh, or to live there, or the culture, or the essence of being Bengali, I guess.
Your first publication was, I think, Tiny Jumps In.
Yes.
And this is like about a very inquisitive character.
Yes.
Wants to know what is under the
lake,
water. Or
under the
lake.
water, yes.
Not mentioning the recent experience of people trying to find out what is under the ocean,
yes.
near the Titanic now. But children are very, very inquisitive. They want to find out, see. How did this idea come to you?
Well, the idea
Tiny Jumps In.
Tiny Jumps In. So Tiny Jumps In is, as you said, about a young girl who is very inquisitive about what goes on inside the waters of a lake, and she teaches herself, she learns how to swim, and then she jumps in, and when she does go in, she finally finds these beautiful fish of all shapes and sizes. But as she goes in deeper, she sees even more curious characters, and it was actually inspired by a book called Catching the Big Fish by David Lynch, who is one of my favorite film directors, and he actually talks about it. It's a metaphor for transcendental meditation, where he says that the deeper you go into something, the better your ideas are. So it's all about good ideas and having good ideas. But for me, once I read that book, I thought, oh, this would be great as a story for children, and it would be more about colors. So, the first fish that she sees, they're primary colors, so they're, red and yellow and blue. And then as she goes in deeper, the colors change to secondary and tertiary, and there's more purples and more greens and more interesting colors that way. So it was a bit of a play on both those things.
Yeah. Well, where did you do your homework for the book?
Tiny jumps in. Where did I do? I didn't. It was a burst of inspiration. So after I finished reading it, I actually wrote and illustrated it in one night. Just one night I took for the whole thing. And then when so it was published by Guba Books, which my friend and I, as I mentioned, we co-founded together, and it was the first publication from that. So when I told her about this book, she loved it and she decided to publish it. So then we tweaked it and we made sure that all the language and everything was correct, and we wanted to make sure that we did as best as we could with that story.
What was the response that you got? I mean, people must have read it, children must have read it, parents must have seen it.
Yes. The response was, it was incredible. It was actually something that I did not expect, because it's only when you give something out into the world that you get the response and you don't know what to expect. But a lot of young girls, but also a lot of young boys expressed how much they loved Tiny and how they loved the story and the inspiration behind it. And when I've received a lot of messages from people, from parents, who have said that it's because of, thank you for this, and the heartfelt messages that I've received really made me understand that people appreciate it.
Yes, we are talking about Tiny Jumps In, and how far did he go? In your book, how long did it take for Tiny to really explore the lake?
Well, when she started, she was curious, and then she went into learning, and then she got the jitters when she thought she was ready. Just when she was about to jump, she got really scared, and then she took some kind of solace in remembering her older sister, who always, when she got scared, she would go ahead and do it anyway. So she decided to follow that and go ahead and jump. And then she finally jumps in, and then she sees what she sees, and then she realizes that it's time to come back out into the surface, and that's where it ends. It ends with the question, what's next?
Right. Was this book used at a school or just
it has been to different schools, and I've given it to all the libraries and schools that I have been able to, and yeah, it's definitely there for any schools who want it. And the word Tiny jumps in, it actually has two meanings, because Tiny is the character Tiny, but also Tiny jumps in is, we need to take tiny steps forward. Tiny jumps towards something, so it has a double meaning.
In where?
Sorry, into anything that you're interested in or curious about.
We have, do you have Tiny Jumps In here?
I do, yes. This is what it looks like. Tiny jumps in.
Great.
Yeah.
And how long did it take for you to write it and illustrate it?
The first initial idea, as I said, came in a burst, and I did it all in one night. So all the rough sketches, the writing, everything just came out in one go. And then it took a few months to develop the story and to write and to do the pages. And it was when I was doing drawings and then scanning it and using Photoshop and then doing things digitally. So my process was very different. There was a lot of tracing paper, one on top of the other. So the process has now changed, but at the time it was very much analog. Yes, it was very analog, and you can see it. And the challenge was to keep Tiny's age in all the pictures of her the same, because in some pictures she looked like she was older, and in some pictures she looked like she was younger. So I had to make sure that there was consistency in her age and the way she looked in the illustrations.
You didn't have a cast for her face.
I didn't, but the thing is that I've always drawn a certain girl since I was young. and she ended up being tiny.
Yeah.
Huh?
I read it somewhere.
Yes.
Whenever
Excuse my cold.
Whenever you doodle, you do that.
Yes, the same girl. Yes, exactly. So.
What is the language of Tiny Jumps in? Is it English or English and
It
Bangla
is.
both?
It is in English, but we have Tiny Jhap Dilo, which is the Bangla version. Translating anything is actually quite challenging because you want to keep the essence of something, but it's hard to translate it. You know.
So the Bangla translation was. Would you think that more popular in Bangladesh?
Yes, I would say. I would definitely say so.
Right, and the other book that you have, the Controls. Oh, that's the latest one. We'll come to that later. The other
Okay. So this was commissioned by Save the Children.
one. Right.
They commissioned our company Guba Books to write and illustrate.
That
And
relates to Rohingyans, is it?
yes, exactly. So it's a story about. It was based on some interviews that Save the Children did with the Rohingya refugee children
Right.
in the camps and how they felt. So we were told to create that into a story and illustrate it, so that the children could see themselves in a book. And I requested to go to the camp and just have an
How
idea.
life is, yes.
Because if I was going to illustrate it, I would really wish to be able to, because I could, you know. So I was lucky enough to be able to go. There was a lot of security, but I did go to the camps and I took some photographs, and I really got a sense of the place and the resilience of the children, and it was really incredible. And I was pregnant with my son at the time, so, you know, seeing children of the exact same age going through that really changed the perspective in which I raised my child since then.
Right. We will have to take another break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about. We'll retrace ourselves back to the Rohingya camp. We had started talking about Insha Russell's latest book, The Unexpected Friend, that talks about the Rohingya camps and in Rohingya children in Rohingya camps and their suffering and their life, and how the government is helping to make best use of their time, and in the process making them learn new ideas and new languages. Yes, Insha, tell us something about how did it come about?
So this book was commissioned by Save the Children. They came to Guba Books, our publishing company, and they said that they had a lot of reports which were interviews, a lot of interviews with a lot of Rohingya children and how they felt and about the isolation and all of those things. And they wanted to really, there's one particular person called Linda whose idea it was. It was her idea. She worked in Save the Children, and she really felt that all of these children needed to see themselves in a picture book. And so she came to us, and we discussed what sort of story we could have. And Raya Rahman, my very good friend, who I co-founded the publishing company with, wrote the story based on these interviews, and I illustrated it. And it was actually done in 2017, 18, 19. So. It involved me going to the Rohingya camp and to have a look at how, because as an illustrator I really wanted to see what the place looked like, and I took a lot of inspiration from a lot of the resilience of the children, and you know, it was just a wonderful experience to be able to have some kind of way of doing something for
that could help them.
That could in some way help the situation. Yes, I really learned a lot of things from that experience, from the experience of making this book with Raya.
How many days did you spend in the camps?
3 days. No, I went to Cox's Bazar, and I was there for 3 to 4 hours, but for a day basically. Just went for a day. So there was a lot of different things. It's massive. It's really, really big, and there's lots of different camps. So we went around and saw a lot of things, and I saw the schools and or the education rooms, rather, not the schools.
How would you describe the life there? I mean, is it really they're living in a squalor, or difficult? Do they really have beds? Do they really have a life, or just surviving?
Well, you know, at the end of the day, children are children, wherever they are. So the amount of normalcy, because you know, being someone who is an outsider, you go into a place like that, but people who are there every single day, and their lives are, that's just how it is. So it was that, you know, to understand the normalcy of being there, despite how crazy challenging it is, the faces of the children, the smiles, the bright faces is all I could see, you know. So yeah, that was really interesting. But it wasn't just that. There was a lot of things going on. There was a lot of food distribution, and people were queuing up for that, and just to be able to observe all of it and take it all in within those few hours was.
Tell us about the food. Was it?
There was ticket system, and then you had to go and.
What was the food?
Chal dal, the staples. There were just staples, and they were all in.
Not cooked.
Not cooked, no. So uncooked, like dry goods. So they were all the staples. I mean, I obviously didn't see everything, but whatever I did see, it was staples and dry goods, and people making sure that everybody was getting the same amount, and people
Depending
queuing
on the size
up.
of the family.
Exactly, depending on the size of the family. So, yes. I mean, I didn't go deep into it at all. It was just all on the surface. But there was a lot of traveling, and there are like markets within each camp. There are bazaars, and within the bazaars, some people are selling
managing
different.
those bazaars and markets? They themselves?
Yeah, I mean,
Are people from outside?
I'm not sure who's managing it, because but, I mean, you can see all the people selling things,
Yes.
and there's like there'll be the food ones, and then there'll be clothes and all these other things, and then there's people who are cutting people's hair. There's barbers. I mean, everything is happening. It's all
It
happening.
looks like normal.
Yeah, it just happens to
But
be a
it is not
refugee
normal.
camp. Yeah, it's a massive camp. Yeah,
How many thousands of people are there?
It's
no
the
idea.
world's largest refugee camp. That's all I
Yes.
know, and it's a lot of people.
And they are the most suffering, displaced people.
Most displaced because they're not allowed to have an education in Bangladesh, because the government won't allow it, and then they're not allowed to go back. It's just, and the thing is, each person's story is so different. So it's a mishmash of everything.
I didn't go to the camp, but I met about, there were 3,000 males and 3,000 females, Rohingyans, languishing in Saudi prisons. Right? I wrote a story about them.
I see.
It appeared in the Guardian, and it was picked up by UNHCR. And I was very happy that it went to them, and they understood the bigger, I mean, the international aspect of the problems, because they came to Saudi Arabia when it was Bangladesh and Pakistan were together, as you see. They came as Pakistanis. Now the Saudi government was very keen to send them back to Pakistan, but that is not where we are going.
Oh, right.
That's not where we are going. You
No.
see. And the Bangladeshi government was a bit hesitant to accept them in such a large numbers, because they already have this refugee camp. See. So I don't know what happened, but I hope something. Maybe I contributed something to some good.
Yes,
Some
yes.
good. I hope.
You did.
But to think that people are living there, and they have been transferred to some chore, Bhashan chore or something. The new houses have been built, and they have been transferred. But obviously, Bangladesh government cannot handle everything on its own, because they have their own problems.
Absolutely.
Hopefully, this book of yours will motivate and mobilize opinions,
Yes.
and in the favor that something should be done
Yes.
for these unfortunate people.
Yes, and it's a story of hope. So that's the only thing that we have to hold on to, really. And we were sent photos of children when they were being read the stories,
Yes.
and read the story. And
This is in English.
this is in English, but we also had it printed in a few different languages, actually, so that the children could read it in a different language, in their language. And yeah, and they loved it. The pictures showed a lot of their expressions, and it was really nice to be able to contribute in that way.
Could they hold the book, or they were just shown?
No, they could hold the book. Yes, they were given copies of the book. Yeah, to save the children. They did a wonderful job of it.
So that must have meant quite a good circulation for your book.
Yes, yes, it went to all the kids. There was a different print to make sure that it was laminated so that the water or any kind of thing wouldn't, so that it was more durable.
I'm sure it was passed on from one boy to another girl and another girl to another
I hope
boy.
so.
And it was a keepsake for them.
Yes, yes, I hope so.
Now we come back to the chonchols. See, where are the chonchols? What does it mean?
So this is my latest book. It's called Where Are the Chonchols, and it's a search and find adventure book about a family, a forgetful Bengali family called Chonchols. So their surname is Chonchol, and they get lost in 12 Bangladeshi festivals, and you have to find them in the different festivals. So it's a big family. It includes some tag-alongs, it includes some pets, and each person has a very interesting character, and it starts.
They keep getting lost.
They keep getting lost in the festivals, and you have to find them. And each double page is a festival. So we have 12, and you have to find them. Shakrain. Shakrain. It's the kite festival. The kite festival that happens in Old Town. It's a wonderful, wonderful festival of friendship.
It's in Old Town Dhaka, I remember.
Yes, yes, that's correct. So Shakrain, or the festival of kites, or the festival of friendship.
But they have the festival of kites all over the subcontinent in India.
They do, yes, they do. They do. So the idea is to fly your kites and see whose kite you can cut off. But at the same time, there's a lot more to it. There's a lot of fire breathing and music and dancing. In the daytime, it's different. In the nighttime, it's different. It's a very interesting.
It's very festive.
It's very festive. But you have to travel to Old Town and go up on a rooftop if you really want to get the flavor. So the illustrator, who is Syed Rashad Imam Tanmoy, he's a very popular illustrator, and he did a wonderful job of all the festivals in the book. I wrote it, and it was my concept, but it was illustrated by Tanmoy, and the collaboration was absolutely fantastic because each one has a different. This is the Boy Mela, which is the book fair.
The famous Boy Mela.
Yes, and then we've got the Poila Phalgun, and then we have Poila Boishak, we have Eid, we have a lot of different festivals. So I won't show all the pages because there are a lot of fun things to look through.
Right.
But you have to find these characters, this family, the Chonchols, in each page.
Right. So how many times they got lost, but they finally ended together?
Yes, they finally do end
found each
together.
other.
It's 12 different festivals, so you have to go through 12 different festivals to find them, and at the end
What
you
is the
become a
last one?
Chonchol champion. The last one is actually Nabanno Utsav, which is the harvest festival, and it's all the pithas and all the fun that happens in a Nabanno Utsav.
How did you translate this harvest festival, Nabanno Utsav?
We didn't. We just called it Nabanno Utsav because that's what it's called. Nabanno Utsav is that, and then the explanation is that it's the Bengali Harvest Festival. There's not too many words in this book. It's very short and sweet. It's more about the image, and it's more about the search and find. You know, the finding is what's fun about it. But we do at the end have a little bit about each festival, just in case if anybody's curious to know more, they can find out.
It's very interesting. What are you working on right now?
At the moment, I'm doing so many different things. It's always some kind of creative service. So from January, I've done quite a few different projects. So the mediums were different. I did some illustrations, and then at the moment, I'm just finishing up a promotional film for South Asian Heritage Month, which is coming up in just a few days. So it's a promotional film for South Asian Heritage Month, and that's what I'm working on right now.
As somebody who has spent about 20 odd years publishing books and writing books and illustrating books, right?
No, we started in 2017. So it's been 6 years actually. It's been 6 years with Guba Books.
With Guba Books.
Yes.
And what is something like Inku?
So Studio Inku is my production company where I provide creative services which are mostly led by me. So I do the films, the illustrations or graphic design or photography depending on what. So it's a visual storytelling in different mediums. For people's brands, for companies, for organizations. I've worked with the Asia Foundation, with the World Bank, and lots of other people who want interesting visuals.
I see something like My World of Colors. You have something?
Yes, My World of Colors are the board books from Guba Books, and they are very simple board books for 0 to 3-year-old kids. They are extremely popular. In fact, my daughter, who's 2.5, she has so many board books, but every night we'll come back with the same ones. It's My World of Colors, My World of Opposites, and My Beautiful World. The three that me and my friend published, you know. So we find it so surprising that she has so many choices, but she, out of her own, you know, icha, she just brings the same books over and over again to us, to me. So
maybe because there's a feeling that it was done by my mom.
She doesn't know. She has no idea, but maybe she knows inside her. Who knows?
What are you going to work on next, as I asked you before?
So at the moment, I am just focusing on providing creative services through Studio Inku, my company, because that is where I'm putting my focus. I end up wearing so many different hats, and I have 2 very young children who I have to, you know, raise and do all kinds of fun things with them. And the book Where the Chonchals, I'm going to be marketing it and talking, you know, spreading the word and telling people about the book. But besides that, I'm just focusing on the creative services.
Will it be right, or will I be going beyond the limits to ask you that is your book being experimented at home?
This one, yes, my son loves it. He knows all the characters. He keeps asking me about the pages. He keeps wanting to come back. It's nice when your own children are interested in your stories, and I share a lot of it with him anyway, so I'll ask him his opinions. He's seen this book, you know, from the beginning. Even Tiny jumps in, he really likes it. and The Unexpected Friend as well. Anything that I do, I share it with my children, and I ask them their opinions. Not just my children, but my nieces and nephews and everyone in the family.
Would you plan to write something about the sports, children taking part in sports and
sports?
Yeah, sports like cricket,
football. Well, Where the Chonchals is going to have a part 2, which is the Chonchals Go Back in Time, where it's going to be, I'm just writing it at the moment, and it's going to go into the history of Bengal and have key moments from our beginnings through to, you know, the time of partition, through to the, you know, the creation of Bangladesh. Yes, the creation of Bangladesh, and it'll be interesting to see what moments make it into the book.
Yes, of course, and then whatever you do, whatever you write, see, that's going to leave very that will impress them, and that will live on, because that will be their first impression about how Bangladesh was created and what was the necessity and what happened after and what happened before and all that.
Yes, that's right. And with this book, the response that I got was a lot of parents got in touch with me and said that, you know, it's because of this book that my child is making me go to these festivals. Now I've gone to Shakra and I've never been there. I didn't even know. A lot of people don't even know about a lot of the festivals, you know. So they're like, I didn't even know that there was such a thing. And my child has made sure that I take her to all the 12, because it's through the year, January to December. We did it through the year, you know, January, February, March, each festival for each month. So so that now more people are going to these festivals, which is great.
Well, because of people who live in Dhaka, Dhaka is a very different city. But if you live in like a smaller town outside Dhaka, then you get to understand this. When I was in Dhaka, I did not know the word or the term Halkata.
Halkata.
See, but when I went outside, probably Mymensingh, not very far from Dhaka, see, and I went into a shop and they were busy and they were doing something, Halkata. And I asked them, what is that? See, so they start the new books. See, from that they see the old accounts are closed and then they start a new accounting system. See. And that particular day probably is celebrated as, and a lot of people will have sweets and go to the shops here and there, and that's a new accounting system goes on. That will bring in good luck.
Yes.
It will probably be brought a lot of sweets to many mouths, but I don't know whether it brought good luck to the business here. But Harvest Festival, if you live in Dhaka, you will know. Seasons come and go. There was no rainy season and winter and summer, the long summer, but not harvest system, not in Dhaka, unless you live in a village.
Yes, that's true. Yes. That's why it's important to be aware of these things through festivals, because it's fun. It's a fun way of doing it.
Yes. Also, now we have a very good system here that we used to call them expatriates. Now we live here and this is home. So we have this mela, that mela, Banijo mela, Baishakhi mela, and then we get this regular visits from Bangladesh, India, or other countries of entertainers, and they come here and they provide the fun and an opportunity for our children who are living here to understand the culture. And there's also a need to understand the language. Have you thought about it, that the children living abroad, they need to understand and be able to learn Bangla language?
Absolutely, absolutely. I really feel that there is so much beautiful prose, poetry, songs, films in Bangla, which if you don't know the language, you just don't experience it. And yes, in other languages there's also very beautiful things, but for us in Bangla there's so much out there, and if you don't nurture it and if you don't have some kind of a relationship with the language, you lose it. And not only that, your children lose it. So I always make sure that I speak to my children in Bengali. Yes, I do speak to them in English as well, because that's just the way it is, but I make sure that they listen to Bangla music. I explain the lyrics, because my parents did that for me. My mother used to explain all the, if you listen to Lalon Shah's songs or Robindra Sangeet, or if you listen to Meera Das Gupta, who was S.D. Burman's wife, she wrote the most beautiful songs that he sang, and those songs you cannot explain if you don't know the language. The beauty of those songs are in that language. So it's very important. I really feel that. And National Mother Language Day came from what happened in our country. So a lot of my friends unfortunately don't speak to their children in Bangla, and a lot of my other friends who are Romanian or French, they speak to their children in their language, and it's fine. They respond in that language.
There is a snob value of speaking proper English.
Because English you will learn anyway, but Bangla is something that you should nurture.
Thank you very much, Insha, for coming along and sharing your views and sharing the good news of your new publication, The Chanchals. And I'm really impressed by the book about Rohingyans, because I really feel sorry for them, because they are the largest and most unfortunate group of refugees in the world.
That's true.
Nobody suffers. Thank you very much for being with us, and after a couple of weeks I'll see you again on this show with a different guest. Interesting discussion. Best wishes. Thank you. Bye for now.